Yeah, all on the beach, clean up the oil.
Yeah.
Day long,
I do this
OSHA
every
rule
little.
is 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes they have. But then it was so dry getting in the air, and now you're cold.
I do ketchup and onions when I'm out, and I'm happy.
That's a lot more than 30 minutes. You're gonna find some dry fit, under. Yeah, let's talk about that. Dry fit t-shirt.
You guys all hurry up? You guys good? Everybody good?
Or was it time?
No.
Your card 2. 2 o'clock. See how long
I need it. Okay. Captain Kiner, are you coming up? I think we should have a rep first. Sure. Okay, just let me know when you're ready. Yes, all right. Good afternoon, my name is Karen Fraivillig, that's F-R-A-I-V-I-L-L-I-G. I'd like to start by talking a little bit about William Devonshire and his history. He was born in 1969 and he began his criminal activity in Delaware in 1983 when he was 14 years old. From 1983 until 2003, he was arrested in Delaware over 69 times for crimes like terroristic threats, repeated incidents of domestic violence, aggravated assault, sexual battery, for dealing in stolen property, and for robbery. In 2003, he was arrested in Delaware and charged with first-degree murder. In 2005, that offense was downgraded. It was reduced to second-degree murder, and he was convicted and sentenced to the Delaware prison system, and he was in Sussex Correctional Facility until 2013. He was released in 2013, and he made his way down here to Sarasota in November of that year. And as soon as he got to town, he started committing crimes here in Sarasota. He was arrested for battery, he was arrested for trespass, for numerous drug violations, for burglary. And this state attorney's office in January of 2018 prosecuted him for felony battery and for burglary. He was convicted and sentenced to the Florida prison system for 3 years and 4 months. He was released and then sent back to prison for a very short time because when he was originally released on those charges, he committed a violation of his probation. So his final release from the Florida Department of Corrections was on August 4th of 2021. As you can imagine, Mr. Devonshire, the defendant, was a drifter. He was homeless. He never had a place where he actually lived in a stable environment. After his release in 2021 in August, he shortly thereafter killed the 2 women who are the subject of this meeting here today. He murdered Kellyanne Ripley, and her body was found on February 25th of 2022. He murdered Vicki Levich, and her body was found on March 10th of 2022. The similarities of these two women's death are striking. The cause and manner of death for both women was asphyxiation by strangulation. Their bodies were also brutally beaten before their deaths, and their bodies were found in close proximity to each other within a half a mile at homeless camps, respectively, on the 10th Street boat ramp off North Tamiami Trail, and just slightly north at the bridge under the Whitaker Bayou, also off North Tamiami Trail. Both women were, like Devonshire, homeless or quasi-homeless. Both women stayed at the Salvation Army from time to time, and from time to time friends and relatives would let them stay with them. But both women were drifters and moved around Sarasota quite a bit. Another similarity is that both women's bodies were hastily concealed by items found at hand after they were murdered. Miss Ripley's body was concealed by rocks and branches torn off where her body was discovered, and Miss Levich's body was concealed near the water, very close to the water, under blankets and sleeping bags in an abandoned bicycle that was found at the scene. The defendant died on Sunday morning, this past Sunday morning at 6:38 in the Sarasota County Jail. He had a seizure in the jail, fell and hit his head and had a brain bleed, and then he was immediately transported to the Sarasota Memorial Hospital. And they did what they could for him, but they determined that they could make no further progress. So he was returned to the Sarasota County Jail on May 27th, and he remained there under hospice care until his death on June the 5th, around about 6:30 in the morning. I would just like to, before I turn this over to the lead detectives in these cases, I would just like to talk about the tireless investigation conducted by the Sarasota Police Department. As soon as Miss Ripley's body was found, it was essentially all hands on deck by the entire Sarasota Police Department, and especially the CID, the Criminal Investigations Division. They closely coordinated with the state attorney's office to apprehend the defendant quickly so that no other lives were lost. The Sarasota Police Department rose to the occasion to protect this community. I'd like to now introduce Detective Kim Laster, who was the lead detective in the homicide of Kellyanne Ripley, to talk about the details and how she connected William Devonshire to the death of Miss Ripley. Thank you.
Hi, so my name is Kim Laster, Kimlaster. On February 25th, just before 7 o'clock, about 1:15, is when Miss Ripley's body was found, and I was called to the scene there to start the investigation. After that initial night, the next day we were back at the scene doing a better search under sunlight because it was dark, very dark out there, and just continued from that point going forward. Her death was ruled a homicide by the medical examiner's office, and then from that point, through a series of over, that I can count, 50 interviews between fellow detectives and our patrol officers. When we were going out making contact, because at the time we did not have a suspect, we were voluntarily asking for what's called buccal swabs, which is basically just a Q-tip inside the mouth, and it collects that subject's DNA. I don't recall offhand how many we had, but I think it was over 20 or so. But multiple DNA buccal swabs were voluntarily given to us. One of those swabs that we collected was from Mr. Devonshire. He voluntarily gave it to us. I believe that was around March 15th. So continuing the investigation, again, we didn't have any positive leads in this. Using hours and hours and hours of video surveillance, using other investigative tools with some cell phones, we were able to locate Miss Ripley on the evening of February 22nd in the area of the Salvation Army. From there, we just started putting the pieces together. We were actually able to get Mr. Devonshire and Miss Ripley on video at 5:01 in the morning on February 23rd. So her body was located on February 25th. We estimate the time of her death on February 23rd between 5 a.m. and 7:40. So we did have the two of them on video going into the direction where ultimately Miss Ripley was found. Since we had at that point an interest in Mr. Devonshire, he was put under surveillance, and on March 25th, he was arrested for trespassing in Pioneer Park and some additional narcotic charges. On March 26th, with the very incredible work of FDLE working on weekends and through the night, we got since they had his known DNA, we had the results that his DNA was located on Miss Ripley's on both her hands, and where she was found, there were like these small saplings that were freshly broken to cover her, and it was also on one of the branches. So on March 26th, he was charged in the death of Miss Ripley.
Yes, next I'd like to introduce Detective Maria Lovio, who was the lead investigator in the death of Vicky Levich. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Maria Lovio, M-A-R-I-A. My last name is L-L-O-V-I-O. Ms. Vicky Levich was found murdered by two citizens in the area fishing on March 10th of 22 at approximately 3:30 in the afternoon. We responded to the scene of the Whitaker Bayou Bridge. Ms. Levich's body was found under the bridge, covered in blankets, sleeping bag, and a bicycle that was placed on top for concealment. We learned later that through the medical examiner's office and timelines through video that the actual time of death for Ms. Levich was going to be March 6th. At this time, we were 4 days behind, and the best tool we had going for us was to locate video surveillance and to canvass the area. We set out to locate video, and we actually located over 19 videos from that area, ranging from the Whitaker Bayou all the way down to the downtown area of Sarasota. What I want to share with you now is going to be a summary of a timeline. This timeline is going to identify Ms. Levich's movement as well as Devonshire's movements. And we were able to do this timeline based on video surveillance and other investigative tools that include Ms. Levich's cell phone that we began tracking. On March 6, 2022 at 9:17 a.m., Mr. Devonshire was caught on video walking into the Publix located at 10th and 41. Mr. Devonshire was wearing a red t-shirt, long dark shorts, and a dark jacket. That same evening at approximately 7:30 p.m., Ms. Levich was seen on video getting off the bus at 1st and Lemon Avenue. The video showed Ms. Levich walking westbound toward 41. Through the investigative tools of tracking Ms. Levich's cell phone, we were able to determine that she was at the Whitaker Bayou Bridge at approximately 8:15 to 8:30. We began to watch videos, hours and hours of videos. At approximately 8:30, we identify a subject later known to be Mr. Devonshire. Mr. Devonshire was in the crime scene wearing a red shirt, dark shorts, and a dark jacket. Mr. Devonshire was in that area for several hours. We watched him move back and forth from the edge of the water to the sidewalk on 41. He was moving different objects. At one point, he took his shirt off. He took his red shirt off, and we were able to get a much clearer view of him. He remained in that area until approximately 12:20 a.m. on 3/7/22. At that point, Mr. Devonshire began to walk southbound on 41 and ultimately east toward Panama Drive, where he was captured on video. Through tracking Ms. Levich's phone, we know that her phone from that area was pinging at the Pioneer Park, which is located off of 11th Street and 41. That phone remained there until the following morning at 10 a.m. Through additional tracking of that cell phone, we learned that the cell phone was being targeted in the area of Central Avenue. We located video on the 7th corroborating the tracking of her phone, showing Mr. Devonshire walking northbound on Central Avenue from 10th Street. Mr. Devonshire at that time was wearing long dark shorts and a dark jacket. We continued tracking Ms. Levich's phone. On March 8th, 2022, at 5:50 in the morning, her phone was pinging in the area of the Salvation Army. We located video in that area that placed Mr. Devonshire on Central Avenue, again wearing this dark jacket that was very significant. Ms. Levich's cell phone was pinging in meters of over 190 meters. At some point, we were unable to actually get to that phone. On March 12th, which was a Saturday, that phone gave us a target meter of 31 meters, which was a very tight meter, something that we were hoping we'd be able to work with. We, meaning the Sarasota Police Department and members of the Detective Bureau, responded to where that phone was pinging. That area is a homeless camp located off of 12th and North Orange Avenue. It is heavily wooded, and it is typically heavily trafficked by homeless people that do stay in that area. When we approached, there was one person in that camp, and it was Mr. Devonshire standing there alone. The phone, we had a very strong alert on that phone. Unfortunately, we were unable to locate it because of the shrubbery, the garbage, the trees, and we actually believe the phone may have been buried somewhere, and we could never really target exactly where. But it was significant that Mr. Devonshire was the only person at that camp, and again, Mr. Devonshire was wearing a red shirt and dark colored shorts. And as Detective Laster said, Mr. Devonshire was placed under surveillance for the safety of the community and ultimately arrested. When he was arrested for the trespassing, Detective Laster and I did interview him at the Sarasota Police Department. He was charged with the trespassing charges and other charges related to possession of drugs. And then shortly after, we had the DNA hit from FDO Lee. Based on this information, we coordinated with the State Attorney's Office, and we were actually prepared to charge Mr. Devonshire this week with the homicide of Vicki Levich. And as we know now, he has since died, but we strongly believe that he is the suspect, the person who killed Vicki Levich. I would now like to introduce Chief Rex Crochet of the Sarasota Police Department.
Thanks, Maureen. So, our thoughts and prayers are with the families. I'd also like to say thank you to our partners. This was a partnership across the board to include the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office, State Attorney's Office, FBI, FDLE, Florida Attorney General, and every member of the Sarasota Police Department came together in order to bring this to a close. They worked 24/7 from our admins to our detectives, to our community action team, to our emergency response team, to our patrol division. As stated earlier, this was done with virtually no leads, and this was done the old-fashioned way. Officers were out on the street making contacts, trying to get some information that did lead to the subsequent arrest of Mr. Devonshire. So I just want to say thank you for everyone in the press being here in order to get this message out. So thank you. Questions?
Has anybody spoke to the family?
Yes, I spoke to Ms. Ripley's
Just
daughter.
talk to the mic.
Sorry. I spoke with Ms. Ripley's daughter yesterday.
And what was his demeanor with
Her.
her?
So, a little bit of relief, kind of the same as myself. I had mixed emotions at first, because I wanted to kind of hold him responsible here. I truly believe he will be held responsible, and she felt the same way, but they're okay with it.
Mrs. Levich's family is, we're still trying to contact her daughter at this time. Our victim advocate, Jude Castro, is and has been in communication with her. However, having talked to her several times, I believe that there will be a sense of relief as well for the fact that we were able to find the person who murdered her mother.
Well, you had Mr. Devonshire in custody. Was he cooperative?
Mr. Devonshire was cooperative with Detective Laster and I. He's no stranger to being contacted by law enforcement. It was a cat and mouse game in that interview room. He was playing us as we were trying to get information out of him. I do want to point out that yes, he did voluntarily give his buckle on the 15th, but we strongly believe that because we contacted him on the 12th in the homeless camp, and at that time he felt very safe that we were not looking at him. I believe he felt that he had covered his tracks very well, which is why we believe he actually provided his DNA swab to law enforcement.
Knowing his history, do you think he should have been in jail instead of running around homeless? I mean,
well, without a doubt, he should have been in jail, which is why we were concerned for the community safety, and immediately the Sarasota Police Department put together a surveillance team, and we were prepared to surveil him until we had enough to arrest him. So at that point, once we strongly believed it was going to be him, we were not going to let him out of our sights.
I have a question for this first speaker, ma'am. I didn't catch your name. If you don't mind stepping up to the microphone
Sure.
and repeating your name again.
Yes, my name is Karen Fravelig. I am the Chief Homicide Prosecutor at the State Attorney's Office, Mr. Brodsky's State Attorney Office.
All right, my question is, when Mr. Devonshire was brought into custody, was there any knowledge of any prior ailment that he had? And secondly, I've heard you mention that he hit his head. Explain that, what you said in that, because that wasn't quite clear.
Yes, that's interesting that you should ask that question. Mr. Devonshire was an epileptic, and he had epilepsy medicine. However, at some point after he was arrested, he refused to take his epilepsy medicine at the Sarasota County Jail. Now, as to his fall, I don't know exactly what the circumstances were when he fell, but I do know that he refused to take his medication, and this death had absolutely nothing to do with any suspicious circumstances. It is attributable to a fall, after which he was taken immediately to the Sarasota Memorial Hospital and treated there as best as the medical staff could provide to him.
What were the circumstances of that fall? Was it in the cell or?
I do not know the circumstances of that fall. Perhaps Captain Kiner can address that. She is one of the administrators at the Sarasota County Jail. Captain Kiner?
Captain Kiner, it's Deborah, D-E-B-R-A-K-I-N-E-R. Yes, he was housed on the medical floor at the time of this incident, and he did fall inside the cell due to a seizure.
Okay, so it was based on the medical issue that led to the fall. Can you clarify that?
Yes, we believe the lack of him taking his medication and suffering from epilepsy led to the seizure that then precipitated the fall that then created the medical event. Any other questions?
Chief,
Yes,
this
sir.
was a big case. One, you're, as the boss, any feelings about?
I just think we're blessed that it came to a close, and I know that I'm very lucky to have detectives like Detective Lovio and Detective Laster leading the way within the agency. And yeah, I was in the beginning of my term, and there was no doubt in my mind that this was going to come to a close. Unfortunately, it's not coming to the close that I'm sure that most families would like, whose family members were victimized here. I'm sure they would like to come to a different closure, but as I said earlier, God will take care of that. So, thank you.
Attorney Freeling or either of the detectives, I mean, this was a case, you know, everyone across all these divisions worked really hard on. You know, how difficult is it for you not to see justice make its way all the way through?
So Detective Laster and I received this information on Friday, and from Ms. Fravelig, and we actually called each other and we talked about how mixed feelings we have. it's not the time and effort and the work, of course, but ultimately, at the end of the line, you want to give families closure, because that's really the only way that you can do this kind of work every day, day in and day out. It takes a lot out of you. It takes a lot from yourself and your families. So giving that to the family is the one thing we hang on to. So I believe that Vicky's mom and Kellyanne's family, having talked to them, they know what was put into this, and if we could have given them a different outcome, we would have.
Was there any motive? You know, did we ever get anywhere? I think the three knew each other, had some history, you know, Salvation Army and at the camps.
As far as we know, there is no motive. However, we can only look back at Mr. Devonshire's criminal history. He was a very violent man. He committed numerous acts of domestic violence, numerous acts of violence throughout his life. And these women were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And Mr. Devonshire acted out on his propensity for violence.
Are there any cold cases or anything that you could look to connect this to? Or is this, you just think this is just these two?
It's kind of early to say right now. I don't want to say no, but I can't say that there will be. This could certainly reveal something down the road.
Nice.
No further questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.